John. This is Comment of Politics. I'm Shannon Grady, and that is.
John Cummings.
And we are excited to be here. Today's episode is actually brought to you by Sports Replay, the store where you can play the sports and replay them again. We have indoor and outdoor sporting goods for everybody's needs: fishing, bow hunting, whatever you think you might want to do, baseball, softball, football. Stop on by. It's located at 1119 3rd Avenue, Conway, South Carolina. It is open Tuesday through Saturday from 11 until 6:30 p.m. John, what an exciting day we had yesterday. All kinds of bills getting pushed through the House and making their way to the Senate. Hopefully from the Senate, they'll make them to the governor's desk where he'll sign them into law. But first, before we get to that bill, let's talk a little bit about a meeting that we had Tuesday night with several members of the Freedom Caucus, as well as members from other organizations. But one particular subject that was discussed was House Bill 3481, which is the parenting bill, if you will. It wants to present equity. John Gallman explained it this way, that when you are married, you have, and your child has, access to both parents, equally, if you will. We'll call it 50-50. But the moment you get a divorce, one parent is going to lose 80% of their opportunity to spend time with their child, which means the child loses 80% of their time with a particular parent. And they want to see this changed to restore that equity from the same, when you're married to when you're divorced, as long as, what was it John said?
Willing, fit, and able. Willing, fit, and able.
Willing parent, a fit parent, and an able parent. You should be able to have a relationship with your child that is equal to that of, whoever your partner was. So to that end, we want to talk a little bit about the problems here in South Carolina with, cash for kids, judges who have been anything but upstanding in this particular area. I understand that there's actually even some potential federal FBI investigations of some things going on in the state of South Carolina because of some of the questions over cash for kids. Literally children being taken from their parents and given over to the foster agencies and then on for adoption. So, and we've had parents really wrongfully have their parental rights wrongfully terminated. And to that end, we have a gentleman with us this morning who has and is currently suffering from just such a case of fraudulently losing rights to see his daughter. We are going to be joined by veteran Carlton Walker, who is in the battle for his life and that of his rights to be a father to his daughter. So we're going to bring Carlton in now and give him an opportunity to share a little bit about what he has done to try and overturn this heinous decision by the judge. Good morning, Carlton. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Hanging in there. It's a little oh man. Let me catch myself. This is a little upsetting. All right, so all right, now that I gathered myself. Currently the family court system is I don't even know how to say this. I'm going to speak from experience. I'm not going to actually speak about my case. I'm just going to speak in generalities. From what I've experienced, we definitely need judicial reform in family court because judges are not making decisions based on facts. I've experienced judges making decisions based on which lawyer they know best. And if you're pro se, which I was, as you see, I have a realtor hat on and I run a handyman business. So when COVID hit in April of 2020, I had 60 grand in renovations cancel. I had a shop with 2 bay garages and an office, and I had to tell my landlord I couldn't afford it anymore. I had to let my 6 guys go. I had to put all my stuff in storage. And so I got behind on paying my lawyer for this court action. So by October of 2020, October 27th, I was 27 grand behind. And my lawyer quit. if I get a little emotional,
We understand, Carlton. I know that tomorrow is your daughter's 13th birthday, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because it was heartbreaking to hear your story. Um, the injustice that's been done to you and done to your daughter is just
I mean,
inexcusable.
yeah, I mean, think about this for a second. I'm a licensed real estate broker. That means the state entrusts me with the public's money. I'm a licensed CWP, about to have my instructor's license. I'm also a licensed contractor. I'm a board member on I Am Voices. That's a not-for-profit that helps kids who are sexually abused or physically abused, age out of foster care, with nowhere to go. I'm also on the board of directors for Generations for America, but yet I can't be around my child.
Doesn't make sense.
So anyway, October 27th, my lawyer quit, and on October 30th, my ex and her attorney filed this court action in the courtroom, and you were guilty until proven innocent in family court. Judge rubber stamped it. There's a lot of false things in there, misquotes of what I actually said. And since I didn't have a lawyer, I went to court on November 3rd. And, I was like, I have to find a lawyer. And so I was given 2 weeks to find a lawyer, went back in front of another judge. And, I'd spent $3,000 and no lawyer wanted to take my case on such short notice. So that attorney gave me, or that judge gave me, another 30 days. Long story short, we were in November of 2020. My parents decided to help me out, and they pulled money out of the retirement and $15,000. And then right after they did that, we found out my father has cancer, blood cancer. And of course, in 2012, my sister passed away at age 33 from blood cancer. So we go in front of a judge, and this lawyer didn't study or anything. Left early at the end of the 30-minute hearing. The judge at that time, January of 2021, solidified my custody being taken away. So my parents couldn't help me out anymore. So I just decided, hey, I'm going to, I'll have to represent myself. So I go in front of a judge April 7th of 2021. And this is in the court transcript. I tell the judge, I'm like, Your Honor, everyone in this courtroom's lying about me. And she says, yeah, I see that too, but then proceeded to rule against me.
Who was this judge?
Judge Forsythe, which I actually filed a complaint to the Judicial Merit Selection Commission about her. I created my own 47-page affidavit. I had 1,400 pages of exhibits, plus or minus. I gave that to the Judicial Merit Selection Commission. And I thought, being a veteran, I don't know if you can see on my wall up here, but
yeah, I see photos.
That's me and Colin Powell right there.
Wow, that's awesome.
I was in Somalia in '93.
Hang on one second. Folks, for those listening, the Judicial Merit Selection Committee, that's the committee of state legislators who select who are going to be the judges that serve in our state. So he is basically sending this information to the legislators who are going to select who actually serves and works as our judges. So please carry on.
So after the April 7th ruling, that was completely, I was flabbergasted. Matter of fact, the judge wrote stuff in her order that's completely false about me. And so I had this 47-page affidavit, 1,400 pages of exhibits. And that affidavit's on the state website that anybody can pull and read. But the exhibits are not up there. And also, so me, I literally, no money. I had the law book, the judicial book for South Carolina.
It's pretty thick.
and I filed a supersedious because the only way to overturn a lower court's decision is to file a supersedious, and ask them to, like, basically the way I read it at the time was ask the Supreme Court to overturn the judge's decision. And so I was able to file that June 15th, and on June 16th, I had to go back in front of this same judge, and she started her courtroom proceedings with, "Mr. Walker, you attacked me." And one of the comments that this judge...
Now, when she says you attacked me, is that referencing the fact that you sent some information to the selection committee?
I filed this with the basically the Supreme Court, the appeals court in Columbia, and I had to give the Charleston court the same copy, and I would end up filing the 47-page affidavit with the Judicial Merit Selection Commission after that. And so I'm telling you all the process I went through. I'm not giving you details about the case.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to understand what she's saying. What
right.
is she accusing you of attacking her over? Is it because you sent that to the selection
because
committee?
I sent that thing to basically.
So you actually used your civil rights, your civil liberties.
Well, you want to back that up? How about this? Every single time I went to file something with the Charleston County Clerk of Court, they would not let me file anything. It was denied.
Mr. Walker, let me ask you a question. I mean, you've been saying throughout this that you are, for the most part, without an attorney. At least you have been recently because of lack of funds, and everybody understands that. Is that how family court works? You're not able to, it's part of your Bill of Rights. It's guaranteed in the Bill of Rights that you are afforded an attorney if you can't afford one. Is that not the case in family court? They do not appoint you an attorney?
No, they do not. They do not. Not that
I would imagine that the overwhelming majority of people in this country don't realize that, at least in this state, that is not the case. If you do not have the ability to pay for an attorney, you are not afforded that because you're in family court and not in criminal court. So that tells you exactly where the mindset is of everyone that's involved here. So if you're accused of a crime, you get an attorney. But if you're in a custody battle that's going to benefit your child ultimately, because you'd like share custody in cases, except all those where they're not warranted, you don't get an attorney. I mean, there's something horribly wrong with that.
Right. I'm going to bring up the 7th Amendment of the Constitution in a minute. It's one of the amendments that's never been incorporated, enforceable in the states, and that's your right to a jury trial for any civil action over $20. But let me get back to this, where we were. So I go in front of this judge on, I think it was either June or July 16th. So I'd filed that thing the day before with the Supreme Court, and I had to give the Charleston County Court a copy. Starts off, "Mr. Walker, you attacked me." It was either during this this episode or the one before on April 7th. She says to me, "And you think you're ever getting your child back?"
Well, that's a threat.
And I said, "Yes, yes." She put me in jail for lunchtime as pretty much that. And she brought up in the transcript, she said there's another father that won't keep his mouth shut. And I actually gave both of these transcripts to, at the time, Representative Lynn Bennett and then Tommy Pope, who's the second in charge in the State House, read the thing. And I was told that he said this is the worst case he's ever read. So after getting my butt handed to me again,
take your time.
I have my stepfather's last name, and he's the one that has cancer.
Well, we know it's very difficult for you, Mr. Walker, but where exactly do you stand right now? When's your next court date, and what are you expecting?
I'm going to get to that. I don't know, but
We don't have a whole lot of time, so we've only got a couple more minutes on this segment. So that's why we're trying to get you through that.
Let's fast forward this. Yeah. Okay, so my stepdad decided that he was going to refinance his house and take all the equity out, and he took out $200,000. We hired this lawyer. This lawyer's spent all the $200,000 and has actually made my case worse. And as of September of last year was the last time I've seen my daughter.
I think that's the biggest outrage right there. I mean, all you've had to go through, all the hoops they've made you jump through, all the money you've spent, all the money you've lost because of businesses, etc. But the fact that you haven't seen your daughter in all that time is, and I think that everybody would agree with that. And the fact that the courts are set up in such a way that this can happen, that needs to be changed.
I had, when she was taken away October 30th, I told my daughter, I said, this is God's plan. I don't know how. I don't know if you could see this, but it's the website, raceandroslyn.com. And also I have another website, thelasttimeisawamerica.com. If you want to go check those two out, raceandroslyn.com. That shows my daughter was chasing her dream to be a race car driver. And I was like probably the coolest dad on the planet letting her do that. But I was put on, the first time she was taken away, October 30th, it was 197 days before I saw her. And I was put on supervised visits, and I've been on supervised visits the entire time until September of last year. I'm not allowed to see her anymore.
I mean, did they give any kind of justification? Did you take her to any kind of place that was unsafe, illegal?
No, I've been on a court supervisor the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, it's I can't get into details, but there's no legitimate reason for this happening.
Right. Well, Carlton, I'm really sorry that this has happened to you. And we're absolutely, now, one of the last things I want you to share with us before we go to our next segment is, you sent all that information to the Judicial Merit Selection Committee. And who was the state senator who went ahead, even after all that information, and put this judge back
I was
on the
just
bench?
as emotional in front of them like this. And it was Luke Rankin, Todd Rutherford, and what was crazy, I showed a picture of me and Colin Powell, and I said, this is not right to treat veterans this way. I didn't, sign up to defend the Constitution and to have courts like this. And they brought her up, and the judge was like, I can't talk about this case. By the way, she was removed from my case from the chief administrative judge for what was going on. But they voted 10-0 to put her back in office. So she's going to continue to do this stuff.
And that's why we need judicial reform along with this parenting bill. Carlton, go ahead.
Do I have one more thing to say? On the 7th Amendment of the Constitution, this is something that I found out. Your right to a jury trial for anything over $20. And this is something I would like to start to push, because this would change family court overnight. You can ask for a $25 seatbelt ticket. You can ask for a jury trial for that, but you cannot ask for a jury trial for family court. My question, 7th Amendment, $20. Is family court a civil court? The answer is yes. Is child support over $20? Are these legal fees that they're wanting you to pay your ex's lawyer over $20? Yes. I, as a citizen of the United States, South Carolina, and as a veteran, I should have the opportunity to hold my finger up and say, Your Honor, I want to ask for a jury to decide my child support, the fees I have to pay. I would even go a step further and say, I want a jury to decide my child's future. Because when you have a jury, the judge does not get to make decisions based on which friend he goes golfing with. He becomes a referee and a jury. Imagine if the three of us were on this jury, and this is how it would work. The judge would say, here's what mom wants, here's what dad wants. And by the way, here's the child that y'all are determining the child's future. You and I, all three of us know, we'd go, wow, we got to get this right.
Right.
And that is how we change family court overnight. We have to have some maverick lawyer in South Carolina that's going to file and ask for a jury trial for child support or legal fees, and he's going to get denied. And this is going to go to the Supreme Court in South Carolina, appeal it. It's going to get denied there. Then he can put it in the Supreme Court in D.C., and we can overturn this thing. The last time the Seventh Amendment was challenged was 1906. Family court was started in the 1960s. It's time to enforce the Seventh Amendment, your right to a jury trial, and any civil action over $20 on all civil courts across the United States. Yep. And that's all I have to say.
Well, Carson, we thank you so much for coming on, and you're absolutely right. And we will certainly keep in touch with you and see how these things progress. But thank you for coming on. And
best of luck, and reach out to us if we can do anything, or if there's anything else you'd like to come on and tell us. Keep us updated, please.
Well, tomorrow's her 13th birthday, and I mean, she only has one, and I'm missing it.
Well, happy birthday to her, and good luck to you, sir. And again, hopefully things are going to change very quickly. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Bye.
So one of the good news stories out of that is that because House Bill 3481 is most likely going to be passed, that House bill is a bill to grant parenting rights in such a case as what we're seeing now, so that you have equitable treatment. In other words, John Gallman explained it, as I said, well, when you go into a marriage and you have a child, the child has equal opportunity to see the child. As soon as that divorce happens, one parent is going to be 80% of the time removed and not able to see the child. That's the way it is currently in South Carolina. So this bill, House Bill 3481, has gained significant partisan support, and it is looking like it is going to pass fairly easily and become law, so that we no longer have this disparity between whether or not a parent who is, again, as John said earlier, willing, fit, and able. So, and I believe that is going to correct this injustice that has been done to Mr. Walker. But I just want folks to understand, part of the reason why I wanted him to come on and talk was, one, because this is a problem with parenting, but two, it is, again, our judicial system is flawed deeply. Now, John, do you remember Democrat David Paschal, the solicitor from the 1st District who came and spoke Tuesday night? Do you remember what he said about how we can possibly get this judicial system changed?
Yeah, we could do it quickly rather than to have judgeships go up for the regular election, go through the irregular election process where people would vote on judges. You could have the governor appoint judges and have the advice and counsel of the Senate, which is how it's done at the federal level. And it certainly seems like it might not be the perfect fix, but it may be the quickest fix. Yeah. And it might be the best way out of the situation that we're in right now. And hold on one second. I have a power issue. So just talk for a bit.
Okay. Well, one of the things that he also noticed is the reason why we cannot immediately change it. We can't simply say, all right, now it's going to be the governor who appoints them, and then, senators who then approve his appointments, is because it is in our Constitution that the judges are selected by this judicial merit system. So we would have to have an amendment to our Constitution in order to allow election processes, which would be to put the judges on our ballots, and we would then vote for them in our normal elections. So with this particular process, it is not necessary to change the Constitution, but rather simply to allow the governor to select them. That's a simple statute change, doesn't require a constitutional amendment to our state constitution. And as such, the governor, as you noted, can then select these folks. They then get approved, and he can actually have a part in determining who's on that committee. We select, I think it has to be 10 members. So 5 can be senators and 5 can be someone that he's handpicked. And then those individuals approve his selections of judges. I think that is the fastest and certainly one of the best ways to fix what is a clearly corrupt system. That Judge Forsyth should not be on the bench, given that she clearly has violated this man's constitutional rights and has taken it so far as to use revenge tactics because he practiced his civil rights and followed the rules. And, made complaints, which you are allowed to petition your government. You're allowed to complain about your government. And she took onus to that and actually sent him to jail during lunch. That's disgusting. So I hope that is something that definitely takes place. Now, do you remember I asked him a question at that meeting, and I said, what state senators do you think will object to this? And this is a Democrat now. David Pascal is a Democrat. What state senator did he say was most likely to be an absolute no to making it the governor's purview to select judges? Do you remember who that was?
Who was that?
It was Senator Luke Rankin.
Rankin.
Yeah.
And you know what, too? I think the other issue in the long term, and we've spoken about this before, one of the problems that you have here in South Carolina is that because the legislature only meets for 5 months, and that's a good thing. I think that's good.
Yeah.
If you meet all year, they can do more damage. I mean,
Right,
exactly. I'm for the government, and I'm here to help. Right. That's the thing you don't want to hear. Yeah. But because it's such a short term, it's five months, and because the pay is so low, and it's I think the House is $10,400 a year. There are only certain classes of people that can afford that kind of quote unquote pay cut and serve and keep their job on hold. And those are mainly lawyers who are partners in firms. And the firm carries them for the rest of the time. Yep. And then they go back after their 5 months, or they go back and forth and they get to practice law. There aren't a lot of other people that can afford to put their lives on hold for $5,400 a year. So you have what I think is too many lawyers. I mean, lawyers are important when you're talking about forming legislation. There's no doubt about that. The crafting process is important. But it's truly not a cross-section of the people of South Carolina. You have too many lawyers because people just can't afford to do that. So what obviously happens is when these lawyers return to their practices, they end up practicing in front of judges that they had a hand in appointing. That's the problem.
Isn't that a conflict of interest, John?
And that's the problem. And that if you eliminated that, maybe there's a possibility that not as many lawyers would be interested in serving. You'd actually have some people, perhaps retirees, retired school teachers, retired law enforcement, retired business owners who say, hey, you know what? I need to get involved here. But the way it is right now, it's kind of set up to benefit lawyers. So I think that needs to be changed.
Yeah, and we are one of we're one of only 2 states that do it this way.
Right, Virginia. I think Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia's the other one. The other 48 states elect. This is not how they do it. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's stupefying, really.
Yeah, I think there are other states that do what is being suggested, what's being proposed, that the governor pick. I think there are states that do that, but there's only 2 states where the judges are appointed by the legislature. Right. So like you said, this would be the quickest path out of that. And I think most people, if they were aware of this, which is why we have this podcast in the first place, I think most people who are aware of this would say, hey, you know what, that's really a bad idea.
Right. Well, speaking of this podcast and making people aware, one of the speakers we had was the chairman for the Freedom Caucus, Representative Adam Morgan, and he was talking about what's been going on here in South Carolina, the Freedom Caucus, that they have put in, the Republican caucus has put in a loyalty oath clause. And it is the only state out of the 50 states, it is the only Republican caucus that has done that. Even the Democratic caucuses don't have a loyalty oath. And this oath requires that they sign a pledge saying that they will not assist, endorse, help with, do anything to help another candidate who would be running against an incumbent member of the Republican caucus. Now, it also stipulates a Republican member of the caucus in good standing. Now, they have since kicked out all of the Republican members in the Freedom Caucus from the Republican caucus, and they've duly noted to them, we're going to run people against you. I have a major problem with that. That is bullying. That is not American. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's vile. And I am absolutely appalled at the sheer lack of spine of the members of the Republican caucus who would say to someone else, well, you won't sign this pledge, so therefore we're going to kick you out.
Yeah, and representative government is supposed to be about transparency. And the fact that they are prohibiting or trying to prohibit the Freedom Caucus members from posting the photos that you post all the time, posting the photos of the voter board, I call it that, about how members are voting. The fact that the Republican caucus came out against this really tells you all you need to know. They don't want people to know how they're voting. And I have a huge problem with that. That's just as bad as the loyalty oath. And the fact that they don't want information on issues that are being discussed in committee to come out that the public can hear. We should have access to all of that, because guess what? It's a representative democracy and we pay the bill.
Right. It's interesting because, what John's talking about there, folks, is when they go in to discuss any legislation, they go to the Palmetto Club and the Republican caucus meets there, and they hash out all of their differences, if you will, so that when they come back onto the floor, it appears that they have a unified front. Now, I may not have a problem with that, so long as we, the people, are allowed to hear what was discussed in that Republican caucus meeting. Who were the votes that said, no, we don't like that? Who were the votes who said, well, this is how it ought to be, so that we can then in turn be an educated and informed electorate, so we can vote in the people that are doing what we want and vote out those individuals who are opposing the stance of the folks they represent. But when they do it behind closed doors and then they go onto the floor, it looks like, by all appearances, that our representatives are not fighting for us, because the real fight is taking place behind closed doors. So one of the things the Freedom Caucus has done is they have brought the fight to the floor. Since they've been kicked out of the Republican caucus, they don't have opportunities to have those hard-nosed discussions behind closed doors. And I'm thankful for that, because, as you said, this is a representative government. We're supposed to have transparency. The Republican Party is supposed to be the transparent leader in our government. And right now, our South Carolina legislature, the Republican caucus, is failing miserably. I have not been this disappointed in our leadership in my lifetime. This is appalling that they want to conceal how they think and feel about us, and they don't want us to know what their real thoughts are as our legislators, as our representatives. And so that's a problem. And so I will continue to share the voter boards and to let folks know exactly what's going on at the state level. And I know, John, you're with me on that.
Yeah, and I think the loyalty oath ultimately is going to backfire, because what it's done is it's kind of freed up the Freedom Caucus, and they've been able to get everything out in the open, because, as you said, they are not privy to these meetings. So if they want to discuss something, they come right onto the floor and discuss it, mostly because they can't do it behind closed doors, because guess what? The door was closed on them. So now we get to see, which I think is a good thing for the process. So I think ultimately that loyalty oath is going to backfire on a lot of people. And I do think that there are many people in the state legislature who are Republican who signed that oath. They're going to lose their next election because of it.
Yep, I agree with you totally. To me, it seems absurd that we have this, that we have this kind of thing going on. But, there is hope. As you noted, we do have the Freedom Caucus, and what they've been allowed, or what they are forced to do, not allowed to do, they're forced to do this. It's bringing things to the forefront that we didn't know.
And it's all about transparency.
Yes, absolutely. So we have to continue to fight the fight with knowledge. Several people at the meeting asked, what can we do? How can we help you guys fight this loyalty oath and all of those things? And Representative Morgan's stance was, we have to make sure people are aware. And so to that end, for those of you listening to this podcast, whether it's live or whether it's later, we would ask that you share this podcast, that you talk to folks about it, because we're trying our best to inform the public of what's really going on at the state level. So let's talk a little bit about some legislation that has made its way through the House and is on its way to the Senate. Yesterday, we had some pretty good news. There was an amendment to pass constitutional carry. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about an amendment that was presented and not put forward, and that was Amendment 22. Now, essentially what Amendment 22 says is that in order for you to be able to use your constitutional carry, you cannot have committed a misdemeanor. Now, a felony is a no-brainer. If you're a felon, you should not be allowed to carry a weapon. You got some serious problems, moral turpitude and all these other things. But a misdemeanor can be as simple as trespassing. Or maybe you were 16 or 17 and you got charged with public drunkenness, Or maybe you're a guy and you had too much to drink and you stopped somewhere to relieve yourself in public, and bam, you got a public indecency charge. Now you can't carry anymore. You're not allowed to have your Second Amendment. Maybe at some point in time when you were young and dumb and stupid and you got a DUI, guess what? According to this, you now cannot carry. You don't get the benefits of the Second Amendment. That's stripped away from you. And we could go on and on with that. So anyway, this particular amendment was to allow anyone who is guilty of a misdemeanor to be stripped of their Second Amendment rights to carry. I'm absolutely flabbergasted that this passed. So clearly the conservative vote for this should have been a resounding no. But here's how our wonderful Ori delegation voted. Representative Anderson voted no. Representative Atkins voted yes. Bailey, yes. Case Britton, yes. Crawford voted present again, which is a coward's way out. I'll point that out again. She chose not to take a stance. So in my opinion, that's as good as having voted for it. Representative Guest, yes. Hardy also voted yes. Hayes voted yes. Representative Johnson voted yes. Representative McGinnis voted yes. Representative Carla Schuessler voted yes. And Representative Williams was the only one that got it right, along with Anderson, voted no. I mean, again, I listed a few things there. You know, you can leave your animal, your pet in your car unattended in a vehicle. That's a misdemeanor. I mean,
So you lose your,
me?
I think, Bob, what they should have done, I mean, felonies, okay.
Yes.
Are there selected misdemeanors that you may want to include?
Yes.
Yes, that's a possibility. But misdemeanor as an all-encompassing note to eliminate people's right to carry, that's a mistake. It's it's way too broad. I mean, when you go to, high-level misdemeanors and low-level misdemeanors, there's a monstrous difference. So if you wanted to amend this bill, what they should have done was listed whatever misdemeanors they had a problem with. I mean, I have a problem with just about every one of them, but I'm sure there are a couple on there that are violent and they're still misdemeanors. And perhaps you might want to look at those, perhaps. But these other things, like I said, trespassing, leaving your dog in the car, it's just, taking away somebody's right that's listed in the Bill of Rights because they had a lapse of judgment, perhaps. That's not acceptable.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with you. So let's say that you had a stalking charge or a bullying charge or some sort of, CDV, criminal domestic violence charge. Those are the kinds of things that I would absolutely have questions and say, nope, sorry, until you get this, expunged or whatever, you can't carry. You can't use your constitutional carry. But to just do the broad stroke and say everybody that's ever been charged with a misdemeanor is now going to have their Second Amendment right to constitutional carry stripped away, I'm absolutely opposed to that. And so I'm appalled that we have folks who are saying, well, who cares? This is how it's going to go. So
example is so many people on social media now who have been brought up on charges of harassment because of the way they treat people on social media, continually harassing them, etc. There are people who actually brought up on charges for that. And if you got found guilty of that, you lose your right to carry a firearm because you were bothering somebody on the internet.
Right.
That's not the same as a domestic violence charge. I'm sorry, you can't equate the two. So they should have gone in. They should have been much more specific. And to just vote this as blanket exception is a really, really bad idea.
Right. I mean, I am absolutely opposed to DUIs. I don't think people should be driving and drinking. That is terribly, you're taking other people's lives in your hands, not to mention your own. But to be fully honest with you, what is most appalling about this is almost funny. It's not funny. It's a tragedy more than it is a comedy. This bill would prohibit the majority of members of the United States Congress from being able to constitutionally carry. Do they understand that? That if you look at the folks in the United States Congress, half of them have committed misdemeanors, and a significant portion of them are guilty of felonies. A fraudulent check would exclude you from being able to carry according to this particular ruling. That's disturbing.
Now, there are places all over the United States where because of the inability to recruit people into law enforcement now, because of the fund the police and the like, that they are allowing people on the police department with misdemeanor charges who've been convicted of misdemeanors. So you're going to allow somebody the ability to be in law enforcement and to obviously be armed and to enforce the law when they themselves have been convicted of misdemeanor charges.
Right.
And you're going to take that same idea and you're going to, and those people can work in law enforcement. And now you're going to say that the average person who had a misdemeanor can't carry a gun. I mean, it's the disconnect there is unbelievable.
It is. And so I really encourage everyone, please call your representatives and say, what are you doing? You know, did you have a brain lapse? What's going on up there in Columbia? For what it's worth, we probably have one of the delegations with the fewest attorneys than some of the other folks. You know, Bailey's not an attorney. Crawford's not an attorney. Schuessler works for an attorney, but she's not herself an attorney. I don't think McGinnis is not an attorney. I do not believe that Val Guest is an attorney.
Yeah, no, Val Guest is an attorney.
Yeah. Okay.
Val Guest.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is going on? What is the thought process that they're using to make decisions to they're certainly not checking the pulse of the people here in Horry County. I can tell you that.
No, and I'll tell you one thing. Yeah, the new representatives are really creating quite a reputation for themselves, and it's not a good one, I would think, amongst the population.
Yeah, I got to say that the two newest elections, which is Val Guest and Carla Schuessler, have been extraordinarily disappointing in their votes thus far. So there's still time to right the ship, folks, but it is going to require that we contact them and let them know. Well, let's move on to the actual vote for constitutional carry. And essentially everybody voted yes, with the exceptions of two Democrats, and that would be Representative Anderson and Representative Williams. They did not particularly care for us to have the right to carry. So the good news is it has passed through the House and is making its way to the Senate, where I expect it to be defeated. We do not expect that Luke Rankin is going to vote for this. We certainly don't expect to see Senator Henry vote for this. But there's also some senators. Senator Penry Gustafson is expected to not vote for it. I don't understand exactly why that is. Now, maybe they'll go in and strip away that amendment that requires that if you've committed a misdemeanor that you cannot practice this. That would be great. I don't see that happening. I'm very frustrated that we are supposedly a red state. And how many states currently already have constitutional carry, John?
26. So more than half.
More than half of the states already have constitutional carry. And here we are, South Carolina, supposedly a bastion of republicanism, and we don't have this as law. That is, again, a disgusting fact. Now, going one step further, let's talk about some of the doxing that took place just last night as a result of their stand to prevent American citizens who have committed a misdemeanor, something as minor as, again, leaving your dog in your car is a misdemeanor. This is what was sent out by an unknown group. Okay, you see here, this was a text message that was sent out. Representative Stuart Jones wants to give felons the right to carry in South Carolina. That's not true. Okay, he did not vote for felons. He said misdemeanors should not be a deciding factor in whether or not you can carry. It's certainly not the broad stroke. Now we could go back and say let's, as you and I said, let's adjust that. But this wasn't the only one sent out. Also, Adam Morgan, the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, had the same message texted all of his constituents. So did Representative Ashley Trantham, and so did Representative Long. Stephen Long was also doxed. This kind of thing is appalling, and it should not be happening. We have got to make some change. There are organizations that are doing this. I'd call it dark money, if you will. They're out there sending out these, it's lies. It's a lie. They're sending this information out. And if you'll note, if you look at this, folks, there's nothing in there that says this was paid for by, whatever. So you don't even know who this came from, but you're certain that it didn't come from any of the representatives themselves. So this is a concerted effort to try to undermine the Freedom Caucus and make them look like They voted for something that they clearly did not vote for. I am angry. I am, I want to defend these guys because they're good men and women. They believe in our Constitution. They follow the conservative values and principles that we sent them there to represent. And for whoever put this out to think they're going to get away with this, you don't know what you're doing, bud, because we are going to make it our mission to educate and inform the populace of South Carolina so that they're well aware of your dirty tactics. This is a dirty, dirty political tactic.
Yeah,
something I would expect from Democrats.
And in light of what's going on, it doesn't have to be the Democrats, does it?
No.
Not in light of what's going on. It could very well be coming from other Republicans who oppose the Freedom Caucus. And just to go out and put misinformation out like that is such a disservice to the populace. Anybody who's engaging in this that is a representative or is affiliated with a representative, they need to be taken to task if found out.
Right. Well, I know there's some folks that are trying to put forward some legislation that would actually require anything like this that goes out to have paid for by, because we, the American people, have a right to know who is sending this stuff out so that we can then, when it is false, we can then take it back and take them to task and say, you know what, you're sending out information that is false, defamation, slander, whatever the case may be, and be able to fully acknowledge that it's clearly an attack. So, folks, I just want you to know, if you got one of these text messages, that is an erroneous message. Under no circumstances did any of these individuals vote to allow felons to have constitutional carry. They simply voted against the idea that if you've ever had a misdemeanor, that you are now stripped of your Second Amendment rights to carry. That is all they were doing. And I appreciate their stand to defend my right to carry, because I'll give you an example. Many years ago when I was in college, I had a bank account with Wachovia, and I wrote a check for, I don't know, $50 to a grocery store or something. I can't remember what the amount was. Not a significant amount of money. Back then, you could buy $50 worth of groceries and have enough food to eat for a week. Not today. But anyway, the check bounced. So I got the check. Everything went to my parents because, again, I'm in college. So I had gone home that weekend. I got the notice that my check had bounced. And I'm like, what? So I called the bank. First thing Monday morning, Miss Montgomery, we're so sorry. We made a mistake. We'll fix it. So I had to go into the bank. They gave me a letter saying that it was their error. I took that letter to the grocery store and said, look, run the check again. It was the bank's error. So they ran it again, no harm, no foul, so to speak. Well, I played sports in college, so I couldn't always go home every weekend. So I had written a similar check to somewhere, I think it was like $20. And that check also bounced. The problem was I didn't go home. So I didn't get it right away. Didn't know what happened because I was playing. It was in the middle of the season. We're traveling, whatever. So by the time I got home, I'd actually gotten a notification of a bench warrant saying, not a bench warrant, but a warrant saying that I had missed, I was guilty of fraudulent check writing. So again, I called Bank of Wachovia and I go, what is going on with you guys? Oh, we're so sorry, Mr. Grant. We made another mistake. So again, I get the printout. This time, rather than just going to the store, which I did go to them, and they said, well, it's too late now. We've already put the paperwork in. I had to turn myself in to the police department. I was charged with a misdemeanor, essentially. Turned myself in, gave the judge the paperwork. They handcuffed me and everything. I go in there, and the judge goes, oh, wow, yeah, I see this is a mistake by the bank. You're free to go. This is going to be expunged from your record. But if that wasn't expunged, I wouldn't be able to carry.
Yeah.
That's insane. So I just want people to understand this is not a minor detail, not a minor thing. So you could do something when you're a minor, or when you're a young person, and then I guess Bill Clinton, he smoked pot, admitted it. Well, that's a misdemeanor. So Bill Clinton can't.
I really think I think that one of the things behind this amendment was to allow Republicans and others who didn't want it, but particularly Republicans who didn't want to vote for it, who don't agree with constitutional carry, it gave them an out.
Yeah.
And I really think that that's why this amendment was suggested, not because they want to preclude people from carrying. They don't want this to pass at all. So it gave them an out, and they didn't have to support it. And very often that's what they do with amendments. It gives people an out and say, hey, look, I just thought this was too much. I'm for constitutional carry, but you got to draw the line somewhere. So it gives them a political out. Well, guess what? We're on to you, so forget it.
What also frustrates me is Representative Morgan, again, the chairman for Freedom Caucus, he noted that this is not the first time that he'd been doxxed. I think this is like the second or third time in just past couple of weeks that he'd been doxxed with something that was negative and false. My concern is that it is very likely that this information is actually coming from other Republicans in the Republican caucus, because they did not hide it. They said, we're going to come after you. We're going to come after your seats. We're going to run people against you. We're going to try to take you out in the election. Now, this is Republicans talking to other Republicans who have higher conservative voting records than most of those yahoos do. I'm livid about this.
And that was the shocking thing when I got down here a few years ago. That was the shocking thing to me, that the battle was amongst the Republicans. Even in New York, you know who the enemy is. The enemy is the Democrats. That's it.
Right.
Republicans, do they fight? Sure, they fight, but then they get it all together and they say, okay, let's go. And even though you're outnumbered, especially in New York City, you're outnumbered tremendously. They have a good fight, and it's very organized. But to see the fissures down here it's just mind-boggling, and it's counterproductive.
Yeah, it is. Again, I just want to reiterate, folks, the Democrats do not have this kind of a loyalty oath. If they did, then you would not have seen, probably Ocasio-Cortez would not have run against the guy who was the minority leader of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, Joe Crowley, right? Wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, they would have put a stop to that. But maybe that wasn't such a good thing. But I tell you, I just think that in saving our Constitution and having those principles presented, this flies in the face of all of that. This flies in the face of everything that we, the people, are supposed to stand for. Transparency, openness, representing your people, not hiding things from them, and not having secret clubs, cliques, groups, whatever, where you conspire against the very people that elected you and sent you to office. I find all of this problematic. So I hope that we can out every single one of these folks who are doing this. I know that David Hyatt is kind of the head dog, if you will. And then you got Tommy Pope, who, again, at one point in time, I was a strong supporter of Representative Pope. In fact, supported him in his run for the congressional seat to replace Mick Mulvaney. And Ralph Norman won that seat. And boy, am I glad, because now that my eyes have been opened, I will never, ever, ever look at Representative Tommy Pope the same way again. So all I can do is hope and pray that all of these folks come to their senses and recognize the way you used to do things, the old school way of we hide everything behind the closed doors of the Palmetto Club and our Republican caucus meetings and come out and present this false united front. Those days are over. Those days are over.
To me, nothing better for the health of the party than open debate. There's nothing better than that. I don't understand why people think that, oh, you know what, we can't air our dirty laundry. Why not? Every family has dirty laundry. I mean, I know it's not a family, but every group has dirty laundry. Everyone. So to get it out there and so it's a knockdown, drag out. I really don't think that's a bad thing, because it does attract a lot of attention, and people see that you're engaged and they see that you care. And then once you come through it, you're healthier on the other side. And just to limit what people have access to is wrongheaded.
Well, and that kind of takes us back to even our U.S. Congress when we had the vote for the speaker, and there were some outbursts, and I know that Kevin McCarthy was, trying to get people to stop and everything else during the presidential State of the Union. But here's the thing: sometimes I look at what happens in Britain in their parliament, and they have some pretty heated in the House of Commons. They have some pretty heated exchanges. And I think that's a healthy way to process and move forward. Because like you said, John, it demonstrates to the people that they're fighting for you, they're fighting for what you want, or it demonstrates that they're not fighting for you, that they're not advocating for the things that you want and the things that you need. But in either case, you are becoming informed, and people are more apt to listen to it. No one wants to listen to a parliamentary procedure that goes on and drolling and it's boring and who cares? We want to see, what are you doing to protect my rights as a citizen of this country? What are you doing to protect the rights of my child? How are you advocating for those who cannot advocate for themselves? And that requires transparency.
Yeah, and I think ultimately what happened with Speaker McCarthy, now Speaker McCarthy, I thought that whole thing was great. It identified who the players were, for sure. Now you know who stands wherever they stand. And it also shows you that if you have a good organized group of 20 people, like they do in the Freedom Caucus here in South Carolina, if you stick together, you can get a lot done because you're the ones that are going to swing the votes. And that's important. People need to realize that if you stick together through hell or high water, you're going to get a lot done. And let's face it, that group of 20 up in Washington, they really forced the issue. And we'll see how that pans out. We'll see if everything works out as far as what the committees are going to do with investigation. But so far, it looks pretty promising. You know, they really forced the issue. There were some people who were very hesitant to dive into these investigations, and now I don't think that's the case. So it can be a great motivator.
Yeah, you know, this past summer, I think when people were talking to Kevin McCarthy before he became speaker, and they were asking him, you know, are you going to have all of these various committees looking into things? And he was sort of like, well, I think I'm going to use your term. He was sort of being a squishy Republican.
Yeah.
And I think the Freedom Caucus kind of forced his hand and said, no, this is what the people want. So you have to give them what they want, whether or not you like it or whether or not you think it's the best way forward or not. See, here's the thing, folks, representatives, whether you're a state rep or whether you're a U.S. rep, you do not go into office to represent your positions. You go into office to represent our positions. So you have to sort of split yourself and put what you think, feel, and believe over here, and then look at what we think will, you know, and believe. And sometimes those are going to align, which is awesome, but sometimes they're not. And when they don't, if the overwhelming majority of your people you represent want this done and you personally do not, you better go with us or you're going to be short time. We're going to fire you.
And, yeah, you have to realize the political risk. And I think that's what's great about what the founding fathers didn't do is that they don't spell it out that you have to represent the will of the people in the district. There are times perhaps when your moral values are not going to line up with the people's will that you represent. Perfect example is the pro-life, pro-choice argument. There are times where there are people who are pro-life who have said, well, the people in my district, they don't agree with that, so I'm going to vote for pro-choice. There's also a lot of people who can't do that. No matter what happens, they can't vote that way because it's against their conscience. Well, guess what? There's no hard and fast rules. So that's a decision that you have to make. Right. And you take into consideration the fact that, hey, look, this might not be popular. And it might cost me my seat. It might cost me my seat, but I can't morally vote that way. And I'm fine with that. I have respect for people like that. If they,
right,
if they're going by their moral compass once in a while, have to do that. And if it's against the will of the, so be it. But you're taking that chance. And the fact that they didn't spell that out in the Constitution is another one of the beauties of the document.
Right. Yeah. And I would even say this. There are things. I remember talking with, I was actually interviewing Mick Mulvaney when he was Congressman Mulvaney from Belgium. And we were talking about that at that time. You know, there was some suggestion that we should go knock on doors and ask people to show their papers. And he said, you know what? He said, I know people want that. Some of my constituents want that. He said, but that flies in the face. He said, I do not want to live in a country where the military, the police are knocking on your door asking you to present your papers. So that's a perfect example of sometimes the things people want are not constitutional themselves. And so in that regard, you have to say, folks, I understand. I hear you. I hear what you want, but here's why I can't do that, because it actually violates the very Constitution that I have to, you know, raise my hand and uphold. So well, that's all I've got for today. But John, I think this is a great segue for us to continue to work on legislation. And I know you've got some other things that you're going to talk about in our next meeting on Tuesday.
Oh yeah, definitely led off by Senate Bill 208. I'm sure you saw this on the news. It was on the news this morning. It's been on the news all over the place. And that is this addition of a fee for vehicle registration that will up the fee on new residents to the state from $330 to $830. And for me, a tax is a tax is a tax. And I'm never in favor of that. It doesn't matter. It looks to me like they're trying to pit people who are native to this area against the people that are moving in. And, you know, it's quite costly to move here anyway. People don't realize that, but you're already paying the title fee. I moved down here. I bought furniture down here. I bought a new car down here. There are taxes and the closing fees. It's all built in there. And to throw an additional $500 on there just to hit people coming in, I think could be very counterproductive in the long run. And again, like I said, anybody who's thinking, where can we tax people to make more money. To me, that's how Democrats think. That's not how Republicans think. And this was introduced by Senator Goldfinch. So I just think it's a horrible idea. But we'll talk about that on Tuesday.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we appreciate you stopping in, and we'll hope that you'll share this. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless. I'm going to be going in for surgery tomorrow, so hopefully everything goes smoothly. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Best of luck.